My boyfriend thinks I'm disgusting for having periods and refuses to touch me or even have sexy time. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 3 months. We met on a dating app. He works in financing and I own my own business. He's 28 and I'm 22, but he is so not mature. When we first met, he came across as a really intelligent guy. After 6 dates, he asked me if I wanted to be his girlfriend and I said yes. I did feel like he was rushing into it a little bit, but I decided to take the risk. A few days after he asked me to be his girlfriend, I mentioned to him that I was going to get off the pill. I was having a lot of hormonal problems and the pill was probably causing it, and I knew that this was going to make my periods really heavy again. Well, when I said this to him, he said, "Wow, that's disgusting." Then he said, "My ex never had periods because she was always on the pill." Isn't that impossible? He was just lying to make me feel bad. And I literally sat there in the restaurant explaining to him why periods happen and why they are important. At the end of the conversation, he said it was still gross and that he wouldn't want to touch me when I was on it in case he got blood on him. Then he brought up his ex again. He said that she was always so clean. I got up from the table and I walked away. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend told me I'm disgusting for getting my period and he refuses to touch me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. The following day, he called me and asked me if I still had my period. I told him no, and he said, "Okay, then I can come over." When he came over to my apartment, I asked him what was his problem with periods. He told me that it was disgusting and that women should try to get rid of them. Then he started insisting on me taking the pill again so that I could stop having periods. I told him he had no right over my body and that I would do whatever I wanted. He ended up going home and we didn't speak for a few days. He finally calls me and tells me that he's sorry for calling me disgusting. But this time I actually had my period. So when he came over, I wanted to test him. I kissed him and told him that I wanted to do it. Then he said, "Okay." I told him I had to go to the bathroom to remove my pad. Then he said, "Are you for real? That's so gross. Why would you invite me over knowing that you have your period?" Then he said that he wouldn't come near me with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, this 28-year-old man said that. Then he told me that I probably smell really bad down there and that I should probably go take a shower right away. I didn't even know what to say to him. I opened my front door and I stood there and he left. An hour later, he posts on his story that he's at a club with his friends. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend says that I'm disgusting for getting periods and he refuses to touch me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's on me on Instagram. He posted a story that he was at a club. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, so I didn't ask him anything. A few hours later, I check his story again, and he's partying with all these random girls at the club. I asked him who they were, and he said they were just girls that he met at the club. I was so angry, I just turned off my phone. At 2 in the morning, he shows up to my apartment drunk. He actually apologized, but ended up falling asleep on my couch. The next day, I thanked him for apologizing, and he said, "What apology?" I said, "You came over last night and apologized." He said, "No, I didn't. I would never have done that. I still think your periods are gross." I started to cry and he told me that I was overreacting. For the past 3 months, it's been like this. Every time I'm on my period, he refuses to even hang out with me. I told him a few weeks ago that I needed him to change because I needed his support when I had my period. He told me that he just couldn't do it. So I took to Instagram and got in contact with his ex. And I asked her if it was really true that she never got periods. She told me no, that it wasn't true and that he was just disgusted with periods in general. She told me that I shouldn't take it personally and that he also made her life a living hell whenever she got her period. Then she told me that he cheated on her several times when she had her period. Apparently it was just like a hall pass for him. So now I'm thinking about breaking up with him. When I'm not on my periods, we have a great time. But I want someone who will love me and support me no matter what. What should I do?
Am I wrong for ruining my sister-in-law's gender reveal? So I, 31 male, have 3 beautiful daughters, 7, 5, and 2, which for some reason people in my life think I'm not completely happy with. If I had $1 for every time I heard, "I bet you wish you had a son," or "Are you ever gonna try again for a boy?" I'd be a millionaire. Look, if my wife got pregnant again and had a boy, my reaction would be the same as the other 3. In my opinion, as long as your child is healthy, who honestly cares? Oh, props to this dad. I never hear guys talk like this. It's so refreshing to hear. The worst and most annoying people towards my wife, give me a son, are my sister-in-law, 29, who has 4 boys and now pregnant with her 5th child, and my mother-in-law. Last Sunday, we were at my mother-in-law's for Sunday lunch, and my sister-in-law said after dessert to come out to the back garden as they had a balloon to announce the gender of their new baby. Well, long story short, she's having another boy. After everyone congratulated her, she made her way to us and said, "I bet you wish just once it would be blue for you guys," then turned to my wife and said, "It's never too late to try again." It royally pissed me off because my oldest was in earshot. I turned to her and said, "Well, actually, Alice, I wouldn't give one of my daughters dirty socks for what boys wear in Europe, and the fact that you base your love on your child's gender says a lot about you as a mother. I don't need a son, so I suggest you take your advice and stick it." She stuttered for a second and then burst into tears, saying I was putting her and her kids down. The mood was ruined, and after that we left. Since then, my in-law said she deserves an apology, and it's been a long-running joke, so I shouldn't have driven my sister-in-law to tears. Wait, what is it called? Can't take what you... Eat what you dish? Can't take what you dish? I can't remember this thing.
Story time about how my husband died and his best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I were married for almost a decade. During that time, we had 2 kids. And of course, his passing was completely devastating to our families. And 2 weeks after my husband died, I was still grieving. But his best friend started coming around our house a lot. First, he was very emotional. Him and my husband were best friends for about 7 years. They saw each other almost every day. Not only did they work together, but they also would go to the gym together and pretty much hang out all the time. So I know this guy really, really well. When my husband would invite him over, I never got the feeling that he liked me. I mean, sure, sometimes I caught him staring at me, but I'm beautiful, so I understand. So after my husband passed, he started coming over as in, I want to take care of you, and we would just kind of cry together. I took this as his way of trying to help my husband, you know, so I just thought he was being really sweet. But exactly 1 month after my husband passed away, he started asking me weird questions. Number 1, do you want to start dating again? Number 2, don't you feel lonely at night? Number 3, you're still so young and beautiful. You need to give yourself a chance with someone else. Mind you, I'm still grieving. To these questions, I would usually say no. Obviously, I mean, why would I even be thinking about those things? I didn't put too much mind to the questions, but a few days later, he came over after he had been at a bar. As soon as I opened the door to him, he said, "Can I kiss you?" And then he did without me saying yes. Story time about how my dead husband's best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, is not my story time, was sent me on Instagram. As soon as I opened the door, he asked me if he could kiss me, and I didn't say anything. And he grabbed me and just started kissing me. Of course, I pushed him away and told him that he needed to leave. That's when he said, "But you didn't say no." I told him I didn't say anything because I was shocked he would even ask me that. That's when he walked into the house without me inviting him, went straight to the fridge and opened up a beer. Then he starts yelling at me for giving him mixed signals. He says that since my husband died, all I've been doing is flirting with him. Since when is grieving flirting? I told him that he was completely wrong and that he needed to leave again. Then he said, "No, I'm not leaving here until you tell me the truth." That I was secretly in love with him and that I actually wanted to be with him. No, this wasn't funny to me at all. He was slurring his words and barely could stand up. I knew my kids were upstairs, so all I wanted to do was get him out of the house. That's when I grabbed my phone and started texting one of my other husband's best friends. I texted him 911, "Please come to our house now." He responded right away saying, "I'm coming over." After another minute of this guy ranting at me, I told him I was sorry for giving him mixed signals and that was never my intention, blah, blah, blah. Then he asked me out on a date. He said that he wanted to take me out and show me a good time. I said no, and I asked him to leave again, but he wouldn't. Finally, someone knocks on the door. Part 3 is story time about how my dead husband's best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, is not my story time, send me on Instagram. That's when he asked me out on a date and started walking closer to me. Finally, someone knocked on the door, and it was my other husband's friend who I texted to come help me. I ran over to the door quickly and I opened it. That's when my husband's best friend, who was drunk in my house asking me out on a date, forcing me to kiss him, tells the other guy that he needs to leave. So I asked the other friend if he could just take this guy home. He said, "Yeah, of course." And he told him, "You're drunk, I'm gonna take you home now." They left together without incident and I was really relieved. But after that, I knew to watch my back now. So here's what happened. He started texting me every now and then asking me if I wanted to go to dinner, and I would not even respond to him. And after that, he started showing up to different places I was at. For example, I go to Pilates classes 5 times a week. This place is near my house, and one day he just showed up trying to take a class. As soon as I saw him, I told the instructor and they kicked him out. That's when he came back and said that he did nothing wrong and that he deserved to be in the class too. He even paid the year up front, so they had no choice but to let him in. Instead, I left. Then he followed me outside to the parking lot and told me that I needed to relax. Said, "It's not like I'm following you," which he clearly was. I got in my car and left. That very same night, he sent me a message apologizing for acting crazy. Then he told me that all he wanted was just to be close to me and the kids. By the way, my kids really do love him. They ask about him all the time since he stopped coming over, and I don't even know what to tell them. After a few weeks of him not acting crazy, he asked me if he could come over and I said yes. I decided to invite all my husband's friends and we had a nice dinner. But again, this guy asked me out. I said no, but my best friend thinks I should give him a shot. He's good looking and rich. What do you guys think?
My best friend almost killed my son. So I met this girl in high school freshman year. Let's call her Rose. Rose was outgoing, fun, and goofy. We were nerds at the time, but grew up by freshman years. There was no issues with her at all whatsoever. No red flags. The only problem in my life, though, and throughout a majority of my life, was that I lived in a toxic household. My father used to beat on me, and my mother used to emotionally manipulate me. And then my mother would sit here and really have the nerve to complain when I wouldn't spend time with her. And then when I tried to explain why I wouldn't, she would just sit here and emotionally abuse me again. So one day I started showing symptoms of pregnancy and I went and got tested, and it turns out I was 6 weeks pregnant. I had a boyfriend at the time, so I informed him. He told me he wanted no part in this. I was devastated and distraught and heartbroken, not to mention. Not only did he never actually love me, but he also abandoned his soon-to-be child. So my best friend brought up the idea of living together. My gut was telling me something was off about this idea, but I knew her for 4 years and I knew she wouldn't do anything bad. So we got our apartment, and you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 2.
She rented out a 2-bedroom apartment and everything was fine at first. She forgot to do a couple of chores, but after reminding her, she did it. So one day she got a girlfriend and everything was fine. But she started to park in my parking spot. She used to eat our food and sometimes my food, and she would leave the bathroom a mess by missing the trash can and leaving the floor wet during showers. She even went through my personal belongings at one point drunk, thinking it was Rose's room. I told Rose about this problem and she apologized and said she'd talk to her girlfriend about it and tell her to stop. Which, her girlfriend did stop for a period of time. I ended up having the baby. I remember on the way there, I asked Rose to bring me, but she was complaining because her and her girlfriend were watching a movie. That was the first red flag for me. So then as time progressed, I was raising my son and everyone loved him, but she was complaining about the noise and him crying, so she helped me soundproof my room. So my baby was sleeping and I was gonna go to the grocery store, which was like a block away. So I left him there, I put the monitor up in case anything happened, and I left to the grocery store. And when I came back from grocery shopping, you will not believe what happens next. Come back for part 3. I came back to the apartment and it felt like it was 100 degrees inside the house. It was so hot that I experienced a whiplash of hot air. I could barely breathe. It was so muggy. I was wondering why the AC was off and then I realized my son was home. I ran to him and he was slightly unconscious. I tapped his face a couple of times and then he started crying. I ran to the car and blasted the AC. I gave him some of my milk and luckily he was okay. He fell asleep in the car seat. I was so mad. Then I saw Rose pull up with her freaking girlfriend. I got up and I confronted her. I asked her why she turned off the AC and I told her she could have killed my kid, literally. She just brushed it off and said the bill was getting too high. She also told me I shouldn't be worried or mad about it because my baby was okay and alive. I was so mad, I just literally went upstairs and I started packing my stuff. As I was packing my stuff midway, she grabbed some of my stuff. I literally had to pepper spray her to get her out of my room. I ended up staying at a hotel for about 6 months. Now I live in an apartment alone with my baby. Luckily, I'm financially stable. You don't really know a person until you live with them. Follow for more story times. Forced to make drugs without knowing at 8 years old. It was my 8th birthday in August and I invited all the neighbors over and their kids. Since I was the new girl and just moved into town, I invited the adults from my mom and dad to socialize with. We had a pool party and it was fairy themed. The boys and girls had wings on for the night and some girls had fairy bathing suits. I obviously looked the best though. So there was this one adult, let's call him Bobby. Bobby was nice, he had 2 twin daughters who were rich and we all wanted to be friends with them. Sometimes he would sit and chat with us telling us stories for 1 hour at a time. We would even play tag with him because he was down. Everyone thought this was nice and even some adults found this attractive as he was a single dad. Nobody suspected him of anything bad. So, after the party, all kids left and I managed to befriend everybody. One day, 3 boys and 2 girls came to my house inviting me to play with them. I agreed. We all ended up playing tag, but then Bobby told us to come over and to play in his backyard. We asked our parents and they agreed. The twins were there too. They had an amazing yard. Blowhouse, pool, grill, and fridge area. So while we were playing, Bobby said he had something cool to show us and to come into the basement. You will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 2. He asked us to go to the basement, and it was the type of door that you opened up and walked down into with a bunch of stairs. The door was built outside of his house as well. So we ended up following him because we trusted him. We were then in a red room with a bunch of grown men putting a white substance into bags, a bunch of plants on the side as well, and it smelled like weed and something salty. So he told us that he'd give us candy if we helped him pack the salt-looking stuff into the bags. We said yay and agreed. He smiled and then began doing the same thing. While we were packing bags, I saw one of my friends getting their shoulders rubbed by a weird man. She said to stop, but he lured her into a room with candy and locked the door. I don't know what happened after that. We finished packing the bags an hour later. We said we were done and he gave us candy. We went back up to play in the yard and a little girl came out of the basement and played with us as well. But she had a bruise on her leg and arm. I don't know why she did, but we didn't bother asking. We just continued to play. After that, we all went home and everything was fine. The next day, there were flyers from one of our friends going missing. It was the same girl with the bruised arm and leg. I saw her go home, so when the police questioned me, I said she went home. Then the cops pulled up at Bobby's house and you won't believe what happened next. Come back for part 3. Got pregnant by a 35-year-old at 15. So it was my sophomore year of high school and some kids my age wanted to be on Tinder. I was a little popular, not going to lie, so I usually followed in what the other kids wanted to do. I liked older guys, not guys my age because they were so immature. I'd usually date guys around 17, sometimes even 18, but we wouldn't have sex or anything like that. So I downloaded Tinder and put my best photos out there, including a bikini pic. And some guy, let's call him Joseph. Joseph was cute, he had a pretty lean body, a little bit of a beard, beautifully done eyebrows, and he was tall. I was 5'1", so I didn't have to worry about guys liking my head or not. But I do prefer boys at least 5'11". The guy swiped on me and messaged, "Hey cutie, you look so hot in that bikini." His age was 19, a little old for me, but I didn't think it was all that different. I responded thanking him, and we started flirting. So he made a deal with me asking for me to be his girlfriend, and if I accepted he would buy me gifts weekly, give me money, all that jazz. I was looking for a partner, not so much a sugar daddy, so I asked if he would be loyal to me and only me, and he agreed. He was perfect. I was a pretty materialistic person, so I loved buying things at the time, so I thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. So I responded with, "Come back for part 2. I agreed. We kept flirting, we didn't really sex at all, and he asked me if we could go on a date to New York City. I lived all the way in Georgia, but he was willing to buy a flight for me, and if I didn't feel safe, I could bring a friend along. I asked my friend Samantha to come, and she said yeah, as long as he gave her money as well. He said he'd buy anything we wanted for us, and we were both thrilled. I told my mom I was going on a vacay to New York City with Samantha's mom, and she said okay. I typically go on vacations a lot with Samantha, so that's why my mom didn't bother talking to her mom and stuff. We got on the plane and went to New York City. He met me at the airport and he gave me the biggest hug, and we kissed. He smelled like cigarettes and cologne. My young self thought that was attractive at the time. Looking back at that now should have been a red flag because nobody uses cigars anymore. So he took us to this fancy restaurant first and we ate. Then he took me out shopping to the mall. I bought 20 pairs of underwears and bras from Victoria's Secret, and my friend only got underwear since her boobs were too big. He bought me perfume and lip gloss as an extra. He took me to American Eagle, Hollister, Forever 21, all these stores, and I was so happy. Then at the end of the night, we went to a hotel. He ended up getting my friend a separate hotel room and just one for us. And you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 3. A little uncomfortable by this idea, but I just rolled with it. It was a beautiful hotel. There was even a pool area. We swam in it for a bit, then I said I was too tired and we went to our hotel area. He took me to our room and he started being flirty. Then one thing led to another and we ended up doing it without protection. I told him I was scared to not use protection, but he showed me paperwork of him getting tested the same day of him being clean, and then I agreed. Then I went back home and everything was fine. One day he messaged me and he told me he was really 35 instead of 18. I told him I was 15 and he immediately blocked me. I ended up crying because I wanted him to continue to buy me stuff. A month later, my stomach grew bigger, just by a little bit, and I started puking and stuff. I was 16 at this time because I just turned it 2 weeks ago. I told my friend Samantha and she thought I might be pregnant. She told me to get a test. Took it with her and it was positive. My mom asked me why I was puking so much, but I just gave her some weird excuse like I ate something bad with Samantha. So we scheduled for an abortion and it's this weekend. Should I go through with it? I'm not sure. I don't really want to carry a child or ruin my body. Give some advice in the comments down below. Follow for more story times. Exposed my photos to the whole school. So I was 14 years old around this time, mind you, and a freshman in high school. My parents were pretty strict about dating and never gave me advice about them or what to avoid. I never knew what manipulation was, gaslighting was, grooming, etc. So back to the story. I remember being in lunch, sitting with my group of gals, and a couple of guys came up to us. They just flirted with the other girls on my tables because they were interested with them. I just sat there because I didn't know anything about dating. So then this one guy came and sat next to me and said, "Feel weird, right?" I agreed and we laughed. We actually talked and had a pretty great time. After that, we exchanged numbers and continued talking. Me and him grew pretty close over time. I would even say we were close friends. I'm pretty sure he flirted with me at times, but I didn't know. We exchanged secrets. We vented to each other. We were almost best friends. We basically told each other everything. Then one day out of nowhere, he asked, "Can you send some photos?" I asked him, "What photos?" And he said blank photos. He said he'd send some too, because this is what friends do, to feel more connected. I didn't want to, and you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 2. So we asked for blank photos, and he told me friends usually send each other these photos to feel more connected. He told me he would feel sad and not connected with me enough if I didn't send these photos. This was the first time that I had a genuine friend in a long time, and I didn't want to lose him, so I caved in. I took everything off, and I sent the photos. He sent some back. I didn't really react. He asked me how I felt about it, and I just told him I didn't really have a reaction. And he said, "Oh." He said he liked my body a lot, though. So the next day I ended up going to school and everybody was staring at me. I was wondering what the heck was going on. I talked to my friends and they told me I was disgusting. I asked them what I did wrong. It turns out that Michael had spread around the photos that I sent him without my consent. I was so upset and I didn't really know what to do. I talked to one of my trusted health teachers and they ended up telling me to report this to the principal. So that's what I did. He ended up getting arrested since he was 18. Yes, in this instance I got justice, but many people suffer and don't get justice. Don't send photos when pressured, moral of the story, because you'll really regret it. Follow for more story times, and follow my Instagram as well. My period blood and poop in her food because she was racist and homophobic. So I was in middle school and there was this girl, let's call her Isabella. Isabella was disruptive and one of the mean popular girls. I was pretty, so she was always nice to me, but not to others. I was quiet and kept to myself, so I didn't really have a lot of friends. One day, me and her were talking and she said the N-word comfortably. She said that a black girl in our class looked like a monkey and said sis is bald because she wears lace fronts all the time. She also said her lesbian friend is in love with her and it's disgusting, and that she was definitely burning in hell. I didn't say anything, but I didn't agree either. It made me extremely uncomfortable because I have friends who are black and I'm also a part of the LGBTQ plus community, and I have friends that are part of the LGBTQ plus community. So I came up with the perfect plan. I was going to invite her over to my house, get a couple of her secrets to spread around, and feed her something disgusting. So I ended up inviting her over to my house on Friday using the excuse I wanted to get to know her better. And she came an hour late. How rude. I heard the doorbell ring and you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 2. She ended up coming an hour late, which was annoying, but she said hi and brought some macaroni and cheese for later. It looks pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. So we decided to watch a movie in my room. It was on Netflix. She pointed out basically every single person of color and had a slur for them. I was so irritated. There was this one gay character too, and she said he was the F slur and he was going to rot in hell and how disgusting and abnormal he was.
I just looked at her irritated. So after that, we started talking and I got some secrets out of her. She told me she stole $500 from her mom and posed it on her brother. She told me she killed her cousin's goldfish one time out of spite. And she told me she was the one who spread rumors of her best friend being a slut. I asked for a zodiac sign and she was a Gemini. She was just horrible. So I told her to stay upstairs while I make her dish. I decided poop and period blood would be perfect for this. So while I was making her sauce for the tacos, I squeezed my tampon in her sauce. This next part. And I stuck my finger up her butt and swirled it in her sauce. I'm sorry, I can't. After that, I set up her plate and called it downstairs. She said the food looked good and you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 3. I ended up mixing all that disgusting stuff in her food and I called her down to eat. She said that the food looked good, but the presentation could be better. I just gave her a smirk and said, yeah, you're totally right. So she sat down and I watched her eat the food. It was so funny and it was so satisfying. I ate some of her macaroni and cheese and I'm not gonna sit here in front. That shit was good. So after that, we talked some more. I didn't get any secrets out of her, but it was fine. I was satisfied. She left and the next day at school, she wasn't there. A week later, she came back and she explained her liver almost killed her. She said that my food practically poisoned her, but the doctors don't know why. I apologized, but I wasn't really sorry. Then I waited until a week and I ended up exposing her secrets to the entire school. Nobody expected me to know so much or to even be a gossiper, but people were down with it. She ended up getting kicked out of the clique because her best friend now knows it was her who spread the rumors. And nobody likes her, and she's a loner. Karma's a bitch, for sure. Follow for more story times and follow my Instagram as well. Check the links in my bio. She didn't want to have an abortion, so I made her. I was in the perfect relationship. I was dating this beautiful blonde girl with blue eyes, a perfect body, and gorgeous voice. Her name was Sabrina. She was basically everything a guy dreamed of. My bros respected me for it too. I was happy with the way the relationship was, honestly speaking. I was never fond of kids. They were so gross and dirty. So much bacteria and bodily fluids out of control. I wanted nothing to do with it, and they were so noisy. I didn't have the patience. So me and Sabrina had a usual breakfast every single morning. One day she said, "What do you think about having kids?" I felt disgusted by this idea. Why would she bring up such a thing? I told her I didn't have an opinion on it and I've never thought about having kids. She nodded and continued eating her breakfast. I really hoped she wasn't thinking about having kids. So I wished her goodbye with a kiss on the forehead and went on my way to work. As I was packing boxes in my job, she texted me saying she had a surprise for me. She showed me a cute little gift bag. I was excited because I love gift giving. Me and her did it regularly out of nowhere. So I went home and she gave me the bag excited. I looked inside the bag and you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 2. When I got home, she hugged me and said, "Surprise!" and gave me the gift bag. I pulled out a baby onesie and looked confused. Then when I looked in the rest of the bag, it was a pregnancy test that was positive. She was jumping for joy and screaming in excitement. I was really annoyed by this, but instead I congratulated her and gave her a hug and a kiss, and I was excited. I really wasn't. I lied out of respect because I didn't want her to feel bad. I told her I was excited as well and we shared a kiss. I was okay with the idea at first. I didn't really mind. I didn't really feel anything about it. But then over time, I started to feel disgusted by the idea and highly annoyed. I wasn't really sure what to do. So I ended up venting to Reddit and they told me to leave her, which I didn't want to do. Then someone commented I could do a mixture that forces her to miscarry. I wasn't opposed to this idea. So then the person left their number, I got in contact with them and I met them in an alleyway. They ended up giving me one pill. They said only one pill because anything more than that could kill her. So I ended up making dinner for her and used the excuse that she was pregnant and wanted to do something nice. I mixed it in with her food and served it to her. She ate it and said it was good, but then she started to feel dizzy. And her face became green, and you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 3. I felt dizzy and I asked her if she needed to go to the bed, and she said yes. Her face was turning green as well. I laid her on the bed and she started shaking. She continued shaking and then I realized she was having a seizure. I was freaking out because I didn't realize the pill would do this. I still cared about her, so I flipped her over on the side just in case she foamed at the mouth. I didn't want her to suffocate to death. I called 911 and an ambulance came and picked her up. I was scared, honestly speaking. I didn't want to lose her. They ended up taking extremely good care of her and gave her a couple of tests. They came back and said they didn't know what the cause was. It really was untraceable. After that, they said they needed to perform an emergency C-section to remove the dead baby. She ended up crying and I ended up crying as well, but I was kind of happy that she wasn't pregnant anymore. So she ended up having it and she was able to return 6 hours later. It's been about a year now and she said she wanted to try again for a baby. Again, I'm still in the middle and I don't have a reaction to it. I'm sad submitting this story and I'm not sure what to do. She said she wanted to try for kids again in the future. Should I tell her the truth and break up with her, or should I tell her I don't want kids? Follow for more story times and follow my Instagram as well. Their dog killed my dog, so I killed theirs. So I had just gotten a puppy. It was a small Pomeranian. It was white and it was the cutest thing ever. Me and her immediately bonded. Her name was Miffy. I thought it was adorable and perfect for her. One day, I went on my walk like I usually did, and I saw this blue-nosed pit bull walking towards us. I thought it was friendly, so I smiled. Miffy walked towards it and barked once, like a friendly bark, because Miffy was a friendly good dog. Then I blinked, and the next thing you know, the dog had its teeth around its neck. I tried to separate the dog from my dog, but it wouldn't let go. My dog was screaming in pain so loud that it hurt my ears. I started screaming for help, yelling for somebody to get their dog. A kid came by and commanded the dog to let go. And it did. Miffy was so weak, her eyes were watery, and she was barely breathing. I started crying and ran back home. I told my mom what happened, and she immediately drove us to the vet, begging for services. They took her in and examined her in a separate room. Me and my mom started arguing. She asked me what I was doing the entire time, and I told her I had my eyes on Miffy. Then we stopped arguing as the doctor came in. The doctor gave us our results, and you will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 2.
The doctors came back in and told us that she was in pain and dying slowly, and that it would be best to put her down. I started breaking down. I only had her for a month, but I was so in love with her. She was practically like my child. So I went into the other room, said my goodbyes, and they put her down. I held a mini funeral for her and everything. My mom asked me if I wanted to sue them, but I told her I had a better idea. So I decided to befriend the dog owner and give it a taste of my karma. So I made cookies for the boy. They were shaped like Miffy, and I gave them to him. I said this was a peace offering and said I was okay and that I forgave him. We were 12 at the time, so obviously he was going to be gullible. I befriended him and we became close over time. We liked a lot of the same things and we had a lot in common. We also had compatible zodiac signs. I was a Pisces and he was a Cancer. I'm not gonna lie, I began to feel bad and I thought maybe I shouldn't do this, but I wanted justice for Miffy. So one day I was walking down the block by myself and I saw his dog. This was my chance. I held out a treat and lured the dog into my bedroom. And I started making the secret recipe for revenge. You will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 3.
I was going on my usual walk and I ended up seeing his dog. So this was finally my perfect chance.